families, welcome back once again. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. If this is your first time, my name is Mamri and you are very, very welcome. I'm so excited to share the final part of the interview of our President General Abdourahmane Tiani. Wow, you will be blown away. If you think you have heard a lot, you haven't heard anything yet. This one is on fire. He is on fire. I don't know how he does it. Like have all these informations in his head, no book, no iPad, nothing. He's just bringing it out. The names, the places, the dates, everything. And I must say that, families, please watch. I'll be back.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Tonight, Telesal's grand interview welcomes Army General Abdourahmane Tiani, President of the Republic and Head of State. In this interview with the President of the Republic, as is customary, we will address the security issue that has been of great concern to the population over the past few weeks. And a few current affairs questions. Mr. President, good evening, and thank you once again for granting us a bit of your time to talk about the insecurity that prevails in certain areas of the country. It is no secret to anyone that for several years now, our Sahelian region has been facing numerous security problems, mainly related to terrorism. The challenges are significant, but it must be acknowledged that progress has been made, even though much remains to be done.
For the benefit of the auxiliaries of this war, that's what's happening. That's the reality. And that's the reason why we are seen as the black sheep, the ones who disrupt the status quo. It has nothing to do with just being troublemakers. Contrary to what some might think, in reality, that's not the case at all. We simply do not want to go around in circles. That's why we act this way.
All right, Mr. President, in light of everything you have explained over the past few minutes during this interview, it truly appears to be a relentless campaign by France and its accomplices against Niger and its institutions. At this point, I have three brief questions. First, what are the reasons for this relentless campaign and their unwavering desire to destabilize us, when one might think, after everything that has happened since July 26, that they have learned their lesson and that we could move forward? Secondly, Mr. President, do we, as far as Niger and the AES configuration in general are concerned, have a common response and strategy to deal with this? And finally, thirdly, within this strategy, what should be the role of our people in terms of mobilization, awareness raising, and patriotic engagement, especially considering that some of our fellow citizens often complain about difficulties in their interactions with administrative authorities, who, it must be said, do not always handle the information they provide with the necessary diligence. A common example, is that they often contact the delegated administrator, who then tells them to reach out to the governor or the prefect, and vice versa. Mr. President?
You make me smile.
Yes.
When I hear your latest conclusions, well, honestly, I see a layperson. Someone clearly talking about a field in which he is completely unversed and inexperienced.
All right.
The persistence of France, to use your words, Sam, they are accurate, draws its essence from a combination of cultural, civilizational, and historical factors. These factors, which have developed and evolved over centuries, are deeply embedded in the national identity and collective memory of the French people, shaping their enduring spirit and resilience. This same France, remember, is the very same France whose renowned master tactician and leader, Napoleon Bonaparte, yes, the very same Napoleon you've heard about in history, books rose to power and changed the course of European history. That's right. Who once said that the word, I don't like to use it, but the African, that's not the word he used. The word is me. It's a word I will never say. He said, he does not know freedom. So he must always be served the meal of subjugation, of slavery, of contempt and domination. Those are still milder words compared to what he actually did or said. It's the same Napoleon, already around 1796, who sent ships to subdue hate.
Yeah.
We know how that ended. The contempt with which they approached the Haitian people was shamefully and unmistakably exposed because the Haitian people had routed and captured several dozen French ships carrying battle-hardened men against populations that were at times completely unarmed. But it was patriotism, dignity that prevailed.
At the forefront.
And you remember the sacrifice that Haiti made to buy back, despite that military victory, but to buy back once and for all their independence.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, they just have to look at the history books. After Napoleon, let's come closer to our own time. You remember the famous phrase by Nicolas Sarkozy when he was at Cheikh Anta Diop University?
In Dakar?
In Dakar, in Senegal.
Mm-hmm.
The tragedy of Africa is that Africa has not sufficiently entered into history. That's what is said to Africans. And when to Cheikh Anta Diop, yes, I mean Cheikh Anta Diop.
It's a whole symbol.
The most renowned and widely respected Egyptologist who, despite the persistent forces of imperialism, cultural imposition, and the enduring imperialist omerta, clearly and convincingly demonstrated that Egypt is indeed a civilization, an important word I mentioned earlier, but one I never truly want to use.
That's it.
It's the ultimate insult one can inflict on a people. To stand in a temple like Cheikh Anta Diop and say that Africa has not sufficiently entered into history. But who is history? It simply reflects ignorance. Because if he knew what history is, or even the word history, he couldn't separate it from Africa. More than 50 years ago, at a time when their great ancestors were coming to Egypt to learn
Knowledge.
the sciences, in particular astronomy, as well as all the other various sciences, this same Egypt, a remarkable and ancient civilization, has left enduring traces that are still visible today, most notably to the awe-inspiring pyramids that continue to fascinate people around the world. These monumental structures stand as a testament to the ingenuity and achievements of African civilizations. However, throughout history, various neocolonial forces have persistently attempted to obscure, downplay, or even erase the historical and cultural connections that exist between these magnificent architectural wonders and the broader legacy of African civilizations, thereby distorting our understanding of their true origins and significance. It is in this very context that Sarkozy would say that Africa has not sufficiently entered into history. Even closer to our time, we have to look at Emmanuel Macron.
Yes, of course.
What did he say?
Was that in Burkina Faso?
Not even in Burkina Faso. I actually consider that a minor incident, because if Marc Kabore hadn't been present at that particular moment, with all due respect, then he's in person that he was actually the electrician, all while speaking openly and directly in front of a group of Burkinabe students who unfortunately ended up applauding the situation. This reaction from the students, though regrettable, highlighted the unexpected nature of the entire event. This just demonstrates to you what is actually happening right now in Africa. I'd rather talk about another one who is currently relevant, Emmanuel Macron. When he traveled once more to Brussels, this time to address the ongoing request for mediation, he made the following statement: "Do not get involved or interfere in the matters currently unfolding between the Nigerian colony and France." He emphasized that it was best to remain neutral and not participate in the dispute. Niger belongs to us. We alone truly decide on the solution. That's why I say it's a matter of civilization. It's cultural. Again, in December 2023, another brilliant Frenchman said, and I quote, "It's the little idiot." I said, and I repeat, it's the little fool Emmanuel Macron who opened the eyes of Africans. Little fool Emmanuel Macron who opened the eyes of Africans. If at any point in the future we were to lose control over these valuable colonies, it would mean that our sons as well as our grandsons would be left with no choice but to travel all the way to Africa in order to search for and find the people who would take their place as their successors. The loss of this
in Africa, they seek their livelihood. Migration is going to change direction soon.
All right.
The European Union, and in particular France, must take all necessary steps to ensure that this African vision ultimately fails. That's what he says. And he goes even further. This vision, this new vision of the Africans from the AES must fail if Niger, Mali, and Burkina ultimately succeed. Others will follow. Emmanuel Macron must go. I agree with him on that. Even if it's with regret, Emmanuel Macron must go or France will suffer. Africa has no history. The same thing Sarkozy once declared.
Absolutely.
Africa has no history, and as a result, that's his conclusion. Africa cannot dominate the world. But Africa doesn't need anyone's permission to dominate the world, since it already did at a time when the world he claims allegiance to didn't even exist, either in terms of humanity or organization. I'll close that parenthesis. And that's why I say everything that's happening, this relentless attitude for France, and the fact that our countries are shown no respect, our countries must remain colonies to be exploited at will. And that brings me back to our natural resources, which is another point. In addition to the blatant contempt, there are these natural resources that are the root of France's relentless pursuit. Because the French understood this before the Nigerians did, starting with uranium, which has been exploited for over 50 years, since 1968. Uranium has brought prosperity to France. The French understood that. But uranium has brought misery and death to the people of Niger. Unfortunately, the people of Niger have not understood that. All our resources, whether they are on Nigerian national territory or in the subsoil of Burkina Faso or Mali, are the target of this relentless pursuit. This is the second point that we observe not only from France, but also from all these Western powers that stand united behind France. Despite the overwhelming and undeniable clear evidence that the events and phenomena that are currently unfolding and taking place have nothing whatsoever to do with humanity. It has nothing to do with France's desire to defend rights or democracy concepts that, by the way, are flexible and change depending on the context and the interests of these powers. So, that is why France is relentlessly targeting us. And the third explanation is the Confederation. In this organization that we have created together, three fundamental pillars have been established as absolutely essential and are shared by all three of our states. Defense, which ensures our collective security; diplomacy, which fosters cooperation and peaceful relations; and development, which promotes progress and prosperity for our people.
HMH.
Regarding defense, we discussed the unified force. Even before this unified force was created, as I explained, we were conducting operations either with Burkina or with Mali, and Mali was also operating with Burkina. But in terms of diplomacy, we made a clear and deliberate decision that everything we do, as well as every single decision we make, must always be the result of thorough and careful consultation among our three states. This means that within the framework of our confederal space, no action or policy is taken unilaterally. Instead, all matters are discussed and agreed upon collectively by the states that make up this confederation. Development, which is the third pillar, as you have recently seen with the creation of the Investment and Development Bank. That is the Confederation's Investment and Development Bank. This bank, whose capital is estimated at over 300 billion, will be established through the independent endogenous efforts of the Confederation's member states. So this is to tell you that whether in terms of defense and security, diplomacy or development, the states of the Confederation are taking action. And this is a reality. We have not remained stuck in sterile theory. Because as a wise person once said, theory without practice is sterile, and practice without theory is blind. We do not want to be either one or the other. Within the Confederation, we combine both to achieve our objectives. And that is exactly what we are doing within this Confederation, to answer your question.
All right. The third point, let me remind you, is about the role our people must play in this strategy in terms of mobilization, raising awareness, and patriotic engagement, especially considering that some of our fellow citizens often complain about difficulties in their interactions with administrative authorities who do not take into account the required diligence or the information they provide. A common example is that they contact the delegated administrator who tells them to get in touch with the governor or the prefect, and vice versa.
I believe the most appropriate term is that when you were preparing these questions, you certainly did not have the data I have just revealed. If our fellow compatriots, those who complain, well, I should say, who used to complain, had actually listened, even for a moment, to what I was saying.
All right.
The mobilization of the European Union behind France. And when I say mobilization, I mean it is total. It is financial, it is diplomatic, it is economic, it is military. With the support, as I mentioned, of a power like Joe Biden's, who blindly supported French decisions simply because Niger had to remain a colony, and the riches of Niger's land or subsoil are considered French. If people knew about all this mobilization, which initially resulted in, as I mentioned in my historical overview, the creation of destabilization movements across Europe and all the way to the Sahel, where these powers mobilized what is called, though, I don't even like to use that name because it has nothing to do with an Islamic state in the Sahel. Islam Niger is not where you go to learn about Islam. We have known Islam since the 6th Caliphate in 666 in Niger, at a time when many other countries didn't even know what Islam was. Other Arab countries.
That's right.
I'm talking about 44 years after the Hijrah through Ben Abi Arta in the oasis. Through Busuru Ben Abi Arta in the oasis of the Kaaba, we came to know Islam in 666. That was during the 6th Caliphate. Today, it's been nearly 1400 years since Niger came into contact with Islam. 1400. We are now in the year 1446 of Islam.
That's right.
So what's happening has nothing to do with Islam. It's organized crime.
Yes.
A crime organized by the Western powers we know. France supports the JNIM, what they call the Group for the Support of Islam and Muslims. Which Muslims are they supporting? Niger is 95% Muslim. Is massacring Nigerians supposed to be supporting Islam? It's the same for Mali, the same for Burkina Faso. It was by massacring Nigerians, Burkinabes, and Malians who supported Islam and Muslims. The Islam we've known for 1400 years.
Yeah.
There's this group right now led by Yede Agali, whom everyone knows. Yede Agali, that's France. And the one in charge of what they call Islamic propagation, which refers to spreading the teachings and beliefs of Islam, is a certain Abu Hamza al-Shingeti, or at least that's the name he's known by, or something along those lines. Shingeti? Shingeti is outside of our region.
Yes, of course.
Just so you know. So there's nothing Muslim about it, because it's Muslims who are being killed every day. Remember Fambita. 44 worshippers in the month of March during Lent, executed by people who were manipulated. Manipulated for reasons of greed, for reasons of ignorance, and unfortunately for other motives as well. But unfortunately, when faced with powerful forces and influences that are capable of manipulating even entire states and governments, it's even easier to mislead and deceive groups of individuals by simply showing or convincing them that this is the cause they're defending.
All right.
France supports that group. The United States is with what they call the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara. IGS is the Islamic State. I told you the headquarters is in Syria. At one point, it was in Iraq. But the same events are happening here.
All right.
For people to truly understand the full stakes of what is happening right now, we absolutely need to make sure we are not being made to believe things that simply aren't true.
All right.
And we need to avoid blindly believing the version that comes from France and systematically rejecting those that come from our own authorities. Because the authorities, I've said this before, it's not the entire people of the Confederation. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. Since it's the popular mobilization in Niger that's actually allowed us to hold on until now.
Absolutely.
But of course, among Nigerians, there are people who are being manipulated. And as I told you, it's through this Sahel cell at the Élysée, which is carrying out this disinformation campaign via the IOM, the French DGSE, and the geopolitical directorate of the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. All these communications, all these tweets flooding in, where you see things like about 135 National Guards have disappeared. Their commander, who went to find out what was happening, was shot dead. And you have Nigerian radio and television stations that broadcast these absurdities, that repeat these absurdities, that share these absurdities. 500 Nigerian security forces were massacred on July 24th near Eza. Eza is over there between the two operations, Chara and Almaho. 235 were killed around there. The most recent case, Etnaun, they say that more than 60 were massacred.
We are taking losses, that's right. But we know that this is the sacrifice we must make to set ourselves free. All right, the peoples of the Confederation need to understand that no power in the world will come to fight the war for them. Others have sacrificed themselves for their country. We are not subhuman. We must not give reason to those who think we are worthless. We are incapable of dignity because we have no history. We need to understand this so that just like the mobilization that has always existed within our confederation, this mobilization continues because the cause is noble. Our survival depends on it. We have no choice. There are no two options. There is only one option, and that is victory for the states of the Confederation. Apart from victory, any other attitude is just nonsense and commentary. We don't have time to dwell on comments and nonsense. All right, that's what I'm saying. The people are standing. The people must remain standing because the cause is a matter of civilization. This isn't superficial, all right? And regarding the flow of information, often, Mr. President, people have questions. People, that's what I'm saying. People have questions because they're laymen. That's what I mean when I listen to what you said, okay? Military engagement, at the very least, follows certain criteria, to put it in perhaps more understandable terms. It follows criteria, all right. The soldier learns quickly. Beyond what he learns, when faced with reality, he draws lessons. We have seen areas where in some cases the terrorists set the bush on fire. The defense and security forces were called in to put out a fire or a bushfire. They fell into what is commonly called an ambush. An ambush, exactly. We saw one or two motorcycles appear in front of the defense and security forces. But those one or two motorcycles are not the only ones planned for this mission by those people. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Hundreds of other motorcycles are hiding somewhere. Somewhere, yes, that's right. Unfortunately, we had casualties in the Sanam region because two motorcycles appeared in front of our men, who followed them with 4 vehicles. They ended up 40 kilometers further on, finding more than 200 motorcycles waiting for them. Ah, yes. A soldier is someone who thinks things through. We can understand
those people who say that the military doesn't react instantly. Because someone who is threatened, someone who sees his brother executed, his son executed, his wife, his children taken hostage, and led away to other places where perhaps he will never see them again. He will not wake them up anymore. Indeed, even if it's just an hour after the defense and security forces intervene, that time will feel very long to him. But Nigerians need to really and fully understand that the stakes at play here go far beyond anything they could ever imagine. Nigerians must understand that given the current circumstances and the realities they face, they truly have no other choice but to wholeheartedly support their defense and security forces at all costs. These are the brave men and women who risk their lives and die every single day in the line of duty to protect the people, even in the face of immense challenges. And despite the vastness and complexity of the territory they are tasked with defending, because we are still one of the rare countries where in every direction, 360 degrees, we cannot rely on anyone. We are forced to depend on our own resources and on our own defense and security forces. Apart from Mali and Burkina Faso, where, as I mentioned, we operate within the framework of the unified force. So people need to remember this and be supporters of their defense and security forces, rather than spending their time criticizing the defense and security forces for not intervening enough.
All right. Mr. President, with your permission, we will mainly discuss two current topics. The first question concerns the exploitation of Nigerian oil. Mr. President, after the difficulties on this issue with Benin, are there any other difficulties with our Chinese partners? This question arises when we know that we experienced a gasoline shortage last March and that several officials involved in the oil exploitation chain were ordered by the government to leave the country. What is the situation, Mr. President?
I believe that the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Petroleum, and the Minister of Handicrafts and Tourism, who were all serving in their respective official capacities at that particular time, held a formal press conference together to address important matters relevant to their ministries. But it is also significant and important for us to take a moment to say a few words about this situation. At this particular point in time, Nigeria is the country that has learned the most from the plundering of its resources, more than any other country in the world. France has spent more than 50 years since 1968, as I said, involved in the uranium sector in Nigeria. If you go to Arlit, the only paved road was built with the national budget by the late President Tangier Mamadou. May Allah grant him his mercy. The Arlit airstrip is still just dirt. And when I once asked why, the answer I was given was that if it were paved with asphalt, what we commonly call tarmac would crack. With dirt, it doesn't crack. With asphalt, it cracks. In countries where there are earthquakes and volcanoes, the airports aren't made of dirt, they're paved with asphalt. This just goes to show you, once again, the cultural and civilizational contempt that the French have for Nigerians. We have learned lessons from the closure of the commune. Today, Orano has withdrawn from the rehabilitation work at the commune site, where they spent more than 50 years getting rich at the expense of the Nigerian people. And now they are leaving that responsibility to the Nigerians, because it's not the French who are dying, it's the Nigerians who are dying. It's not the French groundwater that's being polluted, this is the Nigerian groundwater. In relation to that, Mr. in full responsibility, we ordered an audit of oil operations in Niger. As for the Iranoma, everything that happened, I don't need to go over that again. The initial findings revealed significant shortcomings in oil exploitation. The exploitation also led to results. It should be recalled. And we must always remember, thanks to President Tanguy Mamadou, may Allah grant him his mercy, at the time when people laughed at him, mocked him, these same people from Taiwan or Chaos, they were the ones who said there was only water in Niger's subsoil. There is no oil. And that Tanguy was a dreamer who thought the Chinese could come and extract oil for him. What happened next, everyone knows. I don't need to go over it again. For our part, we had an audit carried out in all areas, whether within SORAS, within CNPC, NPI, or within WAPCO.
That's right.
What we discover does not allow us to remain silent and continue to plunder the Nigerian people as was done with uranium. We identified the initial points of disagreement with which we approached our Chinese partners from SORAS, CNPC-NP, and WAPCO through their managing directors to show them the grievances we have regarding the exploitation of our oil, which is still ongoing to this day, and which we must absolutely change to prevent history from repeating itself. They took note and requested that a written document be provided listing these grievances, which was done through the Ministry of Petroleum. It was agreed to meet frequently. CN, which has experienced turbulent times with these same regimes that the CEOs of CN and here of SORAS or WAPCO protect because they are shared mafia interests. These are games we are not willing to play because we have sworn that between us and the people, Allah is our witness, and whoever betrays the other, may Allah bring them justice. Believers will believe and know that everything we do is for the good of our country and never for our own interest. I regret seeing in the writings, even though I know where it comes from, that people have contracts worth several billions, but the treasury is there. The Nigerian treasury has the luxury of paying for several billion in public contracts. Public contracts? Yes. But let's use a bit of common sense. The treasury, which can barely pay the salaries of just 179 civil servants, is that same treasury going to have the luxury of paying for a ministry's contracts worth several billions? Where would it get those billions from? They should just go and see the Director General of the Treasury and Public Accounting. She must be under observation right now because it's the end of the month.
Ah, yes.
So, as we said, we are not willing to play this game of corruption. What we will do is in the best interest of our people, whom we have sworn before Allah never to betray, and whom we will never betray, God willing. I will give you a few points of disagreement. Regarding the salary, what justification do these people give? That expatriate workers have a high standard of living in their own countries, and that their salaries cannot be compared to those of Nigerians. The same argument as the French recently with those for whom we nationalized the Nigerian Water Company.
The water company, exactly.
Where a French expatriate earns around 20 million.
In salary.
In salary, in CFA francs, with 500 million in additional bonuses at the end of each year. For the 3 expatriates who were at the National Water Company.
What is?
At the time,
that's right.
is this same behavior that these CEOs wanted to adopt in Niger? Yeah, I'll give you a few reference points. The CEO of CNPC, Nigerian Deputy CEO, the Deputy CEO who is Nigerian while the CEO is Chinese.
That's right.
The salary of the Nigerian Deputy CEO is lower than the net salary of the Chinese CEO's assistant, simply because she is Chinese. I mean, it's even lower than the withholding
Yes, exactly.
tax on the assistant's salary.
Assistant.
And it's the Nigerian Deputy CEO who has that salary. Imagine what it's like for the others.
Right.
The Deputy CEO of WAPCO, who is Nigerian, her salary is 21,900,000 less than that of our Chinese CEO. They all live on our territory. So if there's a standard of living, it should be the same for everyone. For all the employees of Sore's, CNPC or WAPCO, since they work in the same environment with the same cost of living, if it's a high cost of living, or the same ease of living, if it's easy to live here. But how can they use the argument against us? Because the others are expatriates, they can have differences of this magnitude. And when I speak, I'm talking about the Deputy General Manager.
Yeah.
And the ordinary employee, basic laborer. What is their salary? We said, no, we can't accept that. After the salaries, they have an unfortunate, through the signing of this Agreement 7, if there are provisions for flexibility. The pipeline that runs from Kwele to Seme, the 1,950 kilometers, is Niger that guarantees this pipeline.
Yeah.
It's on Nigeria's crude oil that this pipeline is guaranteed. Against all logic, against all common sense, Niger did not build that pipeline. There is a Chinese company chosen by the Chinese enterprise that built the pipeline. It is up to her to guarantee the pipeline.
Yeah.
It's not on Niger's crude oil that this pipeline should be guaranteed, since it's a contract between two private entities. Why should the state of Niger be the guarantor? And for that, we're talking about hundreds of billions
Yeah.
that are set up so that Niger pays this amount through its crude oil.
Yeah.
There are many other points of disagreement that, quite frankly and rationally, and given the experience we've had, we simply no longer want to see continue in this direction. And we made this clear when it was time to come back for the third meeting. The 3 Chinese general managers refused to attend. I want to emphasize that they refused to attend. They sent representatives who, during the meeting itself, were called back by those general managers and told to leave the meeting. That's what I said. People haven't remembered anything about what happened between France and us. But what's even more dramatic is that the Chinese ambassador was kept informed of this situation on a daily basis. The Chinese ambassador, whom we consider to be the official representative of the Chinese state in Niger, in their official capacity, is supposed to serve as a bridge so that in every situation, as is customary, a rational solution can be found in line with a well-known win-win slogan. But that's not what we witnessed. There are many other points that I won't go into detail about here, which characterize this tension that was noticeable for a certain period, and which even led Niger to request the departure of these 3 general managers and their replacement by China. What's more, they said that either those 3 general managers return or no one else. This is to show you what's going on. And the ambassador is aware of this, just as he is aware of many other things that we have personally told him face to face, either through a minister of state or directly from myself. All right. So that's why we are no longer willing to turn the other cheek, because Orano slapped us on the right cheek. We are no longer willing to turn the other cheek to any partner whatsoever. Let all those who want to come and invest in Niger come and invest, because there are interests to be had in investing in Niger. We know that France is doing everything it can to discourage investors. And on that note, I will also make a small extrapolation here to tell you that, in fact, the French authorities even went so far as to carefully orchestrate the kidnapping of Western nationals, as well as other individuals, on Nigerian territory, all in order to initially discourage potential investors from coming to the region. Secondly, as they themselves said, to force the European Union to stay on their side so they could return to Niger. What I said can be verified. The person they used for this operation, Brozone, is named Boubacar Dabubungal. The one who used 3 bandits, these are probably nicknames, not their real names. There's Momo, there's Ibrahim, and there's Umar. They are the ones who first, in Algeria, kidnapped a Spaniard near Tamanrasset. They are the ones who kidnapped the first Austrian woman in Agadez. Then they kidnapped another one in Agadez as well. It was the same Abubakar Dabunga. And this is all planned by the French, by elements who are there and who always want to be the arsonist who comes back to play the firefight. This is to show you the perversity of the French policy that is ongoing, that is taking place in the Lake Chad Basin. I haven't even mentioned the abuses against our compatriots, and certainly Nigerian, Chadian, and Cameroonian compatriots, wherever they are. Certainly Chadian, Cameroonian, where they have essentially turned Lake Chad into a camp for prostitution, which is open to various notorious terrorist leaders in Boumema. As a result, he currently has 4 wives. But in addition to these 4 wives, he has more than 56 slaves, whom they call the Kuyangu, Kouyanggou, for those who write in French, and for those who write in English, just remove the O's. They will get the name Kuyang. He has more than 50. It's the same with the other Habib. He too, in addition to his official wives, has Kuyangs. Bakura, he alone has 50 containers that the French delivered to him to serve as housing for these Kuyangs. These are young girls, 10 years old, 11 years old or older, who are kidnapped and exploited, not only by these terrorists and their leaders, but also by the French forces who are in the Lake Chad Basin. They are in the Lake Chad Basin through their instructor. Currently, it's a woman, certainly. That's not her real name. She calls herself Sarah, but we know that's not her real name. She's the one who trains the women in what they call the muemas, those who are trained to carry out suicide attacks. This is France, the country of liberty and democracy, that covers up acts like this. And in the face of a European Union remaining blind, unwilling to see or acknowledge the reality before it. These are the kinds of situations we no longer want to experience. This same France that transported terrorists to the north of our country, they think we don't know, but on the other side of the border, it's a position that the French had occupied by the terrorists of Abu Umaima. Starting from January 25, they left in waves. On January 25th, 150 of them left under the command of 7 so-called Qaids, meaning the operation commanders. These 7 Qaids led a company of 150 men. They followed in February by a second group, this one made up of about 50 Guamas. The Nuamas are those who carry out suicide attacks. And for what objective? The Nigerian oil site, which they promised to the terrorists, when they occupied the Nigerian oil field sand, we also told the Chinese ambassador this. When they occupied the Nigerian oil field, they will share the revenues with these neo-colonial forces, like jihadist or terrorist forces. They use terrorism as a modus operandi, but it is not a designation. So these forces, made up of auxiliaries and neo-colonial shooters, are positioned there to eventually conquer, in a second phase, the Nigerian oil field. We told the ambassador, and we made it even clearer to the ambassador, when they entered into negotiations in September, October, with Salah, Mahmoud Salah, who was captured on February 22 by the Libyan armed forces.
Libyan, that's right.
The Chinese went to see him to offer him 10 million following the attack carried out by Musa Kuname on June 21 in the Taskir area. So they went to see him to say, we are offering you $10 million so that you no longer attack our infrastructure. These $10 million were supposed to pass through Paris via a woman named Dr. Mena, whom I don't know. She knows herself. Maybe the Nigerians also recognize her or will recognize her. Dr. Mena will serve as the focal point in connection with the Nigerians who are on the run and in exile, supported by the Nigerian state. Mahmoud Salah will make the move. We know where he went, where he obtained passports, and he was supposed to go to Nigeria, to Abuja or Sokoto to collect this transfer, certainly with the Commission for the Intermediaries. We called the ambassador, and I told the Minister of State, Minister of Defense, to call him and tell him that we are aware of the situation and that if our cooperation is to continue, he must ensure that these transfers are not made. They have suspended it, but it is only suspended. As I said, it is suspended, and I will explain why. On March honest, there was another contact that was made. Why? Because there was a Chinese national who was abducted by the same group as Salah and others, Musa Kunami. That's it. We followed the French who were in the process of planning this operation. We also called the Chinese ambassador to inform him. That is the intention of the French. To use every possible means and method to take control of the Agadem oil field, they sent, through both Musa Kunami and Mahmoud Salah, their operatives to kidnap Chinese expatriates and then demand a large sum of money. We informed him. I directed him to the DG2SC so they could give him a memo that he must pass on to his compatriots at the oil field, stating that no Chinese national should move without an escort, that no Chinese national should move without an escort. He took note, we gave him the memo, and he left. Less than a week later, we learned that a Chinese national got up, took a vehicle and 2 guards, and went out on a mission. And worse, no one was aware of the route he took. To put it simply, no one knew about the road he used. His name is Zhao Wendong. They set out, and as if by magic, they were intercepted along the way. The 2 guards who were accompanying him were shot dead. He was kidnapped. To give you an idea, on March honest, the Chinese traveled to a neighboring country to negotiate with the very same bandits who had kidnapped the Chinese man, offering them $15 million and 150 Toyota 4x4 vehicles. When we found out about this, we also summoned the ambassador to tell him this way of doing things does not inspire confidence in the Nigerian state. They pretended to suspend the negotiations. But we learned on the 22nd of this May that the Chinese man had been released without anyone knowing. He was quietly taken to Jibela, it seems, and dropped off with a supply of food. The Chinese man who was supposed to pick him up simply told the guard, who are always providing their security, we are going to this area to look for something. He didn't tell them what the mission was. This just shows you how people operate. For us, it's our conviction that they are in cahoots with these bandits. Imagine if the escort arrangement is a particularly light and minimal one, meaning there are very few guards or protective measures in place, and people who, in any case, have absolutely no voice or influence on the other side decide to set up an ambush for our people, putting everyone at significant risk. It will be more expatriates kidnapped that we will have to lament, and Niger, the Nigerian security forces, will be blamed for incompetence, because that's what they want the world to believe. That's the misinformation. So they went, they retrieved him. They did not inform the Nigerian authorities, nothing. They repatriated him here to Niamey. And I believe on the 22nd, he took a flight and left for China. Whereas in such circumstances, at the very least, the country should be involved, because of course we have questions. We have doubts that need to be cleared up. But the fact of acting in such a secretive way only reinforces our doubts. This is the shady game the ambassador has been playing. We are accused of being troublemakers. We are not troublemakers. No country wants to be disrespected and underestimated. No country that is aware of itself, let alone the authorities of a conscious nation that has sworn before God, with God as witness between them and the people, if they betray the people's interests, would accept that.
All right. Mr. President, this is the second current affairs question. The rainy season is approaching in Niger. What lessons have we learned from what happened last year? And what message do you have for our people?
Indeed, the rainy season is on the horizon. It has already started to set in. There are areas that have suffered. The lessons are twofold: security-related and humanitarian. Security-related, especially in terms of our duty and our responsibility to protect all Nigerians, ensuring that they are able to safely go about their farming or pastoral activities, particularly when the appropriate time comes. Humanitarian. Because as we saw last season, we actually recorded rainfall levels that had never been seen before. We lost more than 300 of our fellow compatriots whom we had committed to support and whom we did indeed assist, providing them with much needed help and aid, using our own limited resources and capacities to the significant tune of approximately 12 billion CFA francs. We never requested international aid. We never asked for or declared a state of disaster in Niger, because we know that if we organize ourselves better, we can provide an appropriate response to any situation within our territory. The people of Niger are quite courageous, quite resilient in facing any situation. And that is what we are witnessing. Nevertheless, still within the framework of this second point, we have taken measures, because most of the deaths are due to the collapse of houses made of clay.
Absolutely.
We have decided through sectoral structures to review the ways of building in Niger and the construction materials to be used. And it is in this context, the Ministry of Commerce and the Ministry of Housing have contacted the two companies that currently produce cement to see what taxes and duties the state could waive so that these cement companies can produce cement at a price that would allow Nigerians, instead of reusing clay, to use cement. So even if the buildings are flooded, we are a country of sunshine. When the sun comes back and the water recedes, it's only your belongings that will get wet. You dry them and they'll be dry within the next 30 minutes. So we need to change the construction materials. And that's why we have reduced the price per ton. You saw it depending on the regions, because we had to include transportation costs for the transport. And that's what was implemented. And that's what some Nigerians said was not right, that it was populism. They said we shouldn't have lowered the price of cement. It was Nigerians themselves who spoke out to say such absurd things, calling it populism. They didn't see it as populism when houses were collapsing on our fellow citizens. 300 deaths were recorded, either from building collapses or from drowning. Drowning because people tried to cross flooded areas, and unfortunately it was often entire vehicles, whole trucks, that were swept away, resulting in very heavy casualties. That's what happened in the Ottawa region, where around 60 people were carried away by runoff waters from a flooded area. So these are the measures we have taken to deal with the season, and which we need to strengthen to face this season that, according to the weather forecast, will be even more abundant, God willing. But we must always look at the glass as half full rather than half empty, because rainfall is a blessing from Allah and should be used in that sense. Risky behaviors must be eliminated, and that is what the state is trying to do, or is doing, to effectively eliminate these risky behaviors. And that is what we are doing for this campaign that
Has just started.
which has just begun right at the start. And in any case, we hope it will be a better campaign than last year's, even though we are still benefiting from the products of the previous campaign period.
The previous one, exactly.
Nigerians have remained silent. A bag of rice is 11,000. No one talks about it. It is only in prayers that we give thanks to Allah for granting us this blessing. A bag of millet is 27,000. That's the late season millet. The early season millet is 28,000. A bag of sorghum is 28,000. A bag of corn is 27,000. No one talks about it. Whereas at the same time before, it was twice as much.
Yes, of course.
There have been years when it was twice this crime. But back then, people spoke up. Exactly.
All right. Mr. President, to conclude this major interview, your final word. What will be your final word?
My final word in relation to the overview of the situation I have just given and regarding the implications I have just reviewed for those who were unaware is that Nigerians should come together and stand out as they have done through their deep and unwavering sense of patriotism, that the people of the Confederation in general should distinguish themselves even more through their patriotic commitment. This is a long-term struggle. It is a fight against a master of treachery. It's a struggle in which Nigerians must gradually and over time, they should pay less and less attention to these tweets, whose origin we know, as we have repeatedly observed, and whose purpose we are, in fact, absolutely fully aware of. Nigerians must continue to pray for their country. I often hear people say, yet we have, or we had, supported the National Council for the Safeguard of the Homeland. But anyone who speaks like that has not understood the struggle. The struggle is not for the National Council for the Safeguard of the Homeland. The struggle is for the dignity of Niger. The struggle is for the survival of Niger. The struggle is for the sovereignty of Niger. And this struggle is the same in Mali and in Burkina Faso. It is for survival. It is for the dignity of all of us. So I am not fighting for this person or that person. This person or that person are just individuals who are leading the struggle alongside you and who have taken on the heavy responsibility of showing the way forward and having the courage to say no. When it is necessary to say no, that is the truth. So people need to understand that the fight they are waging is for Niger. It's not for me, of course. It's not for me. It's not for the National Council. It's for our country. We are a nation of proud people, millions strong. It's because people are unaware of their history that they underestimate themselves. We are a people who have been organized for more than 5,000 years, Niger. We must not think of Niger as just the Republic of December 18, 1958. Yes, of course. That's colonization. Niger is an ancient land, more than 5,000 years old. So Nigerians must be convinced that each of them is a member of a dignified, proud, ancient people of a civilization that predates the civilization of those who want to teach us lessons about democracy and dignity. All Nigerians must focus their prayers on their country, on their confederation. If we have endured, it is not only because of our own will, but also the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whom we implore every time we pray. When I pray, I do not pray for myself. I pray for my country. That is what I believe every Nigerian should keep in mind when they pray. He prays first for his country, because the day Niger ceases to exist, he himself will cease to exist as an individual, as a Nigerian, since there will no longer be a Niger. There will no longer be a homeland to cherish. This is the call I am making to all Nigerians. Strengthen your prayers, whether you are in the cities or in the countryside. The state will do its part. The state will never betray, because the state is aware that it has placed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala between itself and its people. If it betrays its people, Allah is the wisest of judges. What Allah has not judged, no individual can claim that right for themselves. Even if we do not believe, we must at least believe in something, of course. So this thing in which we believe, knowing that it is the supreme being, the highest thing, and for us, that is Allah. And it is before Allah that we have sworn to defend the interests of our people, and we will do so, inshallah, until our last breath. May Nigerians stand united, remain united, and avoid giving in to the siren calls of ethnocentrism, regionalism, and neocolonialism, which only serve to fulfill an agenda of colonial powers through the crumbs they are given, through the power that is dangled before them or made to seem within reach. You get a second term, you get a third term, you get a fourth term, go ahead and massacre your people. And forward march, the people are massacred. You get so many millions, you get so many houses, you get so much of this or that, go ahead and give us the information. Spread this information and you go ahead and spread it. All the while knowing that what you're doing is harmful. And for that, I want to draw the attention of the press. France has what they call the French Agency for Media Development. The French Agency for Media Development operates through Canal France International. They have created an organization they call Crossover. Crossover, it's not French. It's not British, but French. French? Yes. They have created this NGO with an English name to make sure that the diversions happen. Through this NGO, they actively recruit journalists. What do you call those individuals who are especially active on social media platforms?
Yeah.
Activists. But they're activists.
Yeah.
Interested.
Okay.
We're talking about, it's tens of millions of CFA francs that they are given as a budget. Yeah. So Crossover is a branch of Canal France International itself, which is run by the French Agency for Media Development. All this misinformation also comes from that tool.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunately run by journalists and Nigerians. We know because in November 2000, for a training session, we know about it. They shouldn't think they'll go unnoticed and get past the barriers. We know, but we're watching them.
All right.
Because we know that Allah has already decided their fate. We are only following, but we are not remaining passive. So these people need to understand that everything they do against their country is not in their country's interest.
All right.
They need to stop playing the game that we can see. Some lent their pages to the French intelligence agency, the DGSE. They use their pages. I'm saying this because I know that the French DGSE will, against them, will say, when they send them, you really have to know these people well. When they send a message, they say, well, we are sure that the presidency will seize funds, or that ministry X will seize funds. But that's what they did. Senegal for a training session. We know about it. They shouldn't think they'll go unnoticed and get past the barriers. We know, but we're watching them.
All right.
Because we know that Allah has already decided their fate. We are only following, but we are not remaining passive. So these people need to understand that everything they do against their country is not in their country's interest.
All right.
They need to stop playing the game that we can see. Some lent their pages to the French intelligence agency, the DGSE. They use their pages. I'm saying this because I know that the French DGSE will, against them, will say, when they send them, you really have to know these people well. When they send a message, they say, well, we are sure that the presidency will seize funds, or that ministry X will seize funds. But that's what they did. Here's an anecdote. when we made the latest revelations,
Yes.
all the French DGSC agents who served in Niger, Mali, or Burkina were subjected to a polygraph test.
Yeah.
The polygraph is the lie detector. Because for them, those pathetic Nigerians couldn't possibly know our secret unless it was through our own compatriots. They humiliated them, put them in quarantine, subjected them to the polygraph, the lie detector test. And after that, I don't know what happened to those victims.
Yeah.
But let them know that the relocations they're preparing, by the way, they've actually sped up work on the 20 hectares at Fort Neuf. And yes, we're fully aware of it.
Okay.
The 6,000 offices they want to build with 130,000 square meters of floor space, we're aware of that too.
And
We already have offices reserved. God willing, we will know everything they plan to do because their ill intent is not accepted. We are counting on the Nigerians to stand firm. What we will tell them
all right.
is nothing but the pure truth. If the French are not actually considering moving because they think we've infiltrated their wall on Boulevard de Mortier to return to Fort Neuf on 20 hectares, then they just have to come out and deny it. It's true they did have a project since 2021, but this project was dormant. It had to be reactivated with billions of euros to make it happen, and within a short time frame. And this decision was made following our latest interventions in December, where they traumatized or humiliated their own fellow citizens whom they believe to be the source of the leaks that allowed us to keep the Nigerians informed. So what we are saying, we are not making anything up. It is the sad truth. Whether they are Nigerians, Burkinabes, or Malians who play France's game, they must understand that it is a game of humiliation, degradation, and lack of dignity. It is a path without justice. Nothing is above Niger. Nothing is above our confederal space. Nothing for Malians born above Mali. Nothing for Burkinabes born above Burkina. These compatriots need to understand that the struggle we are waging is not for ourselves. We are fighting for all our people whom we simply want to see go about their work without having to be confronted with 12.7s, 14.5s, or whatever kind of air cover. Yes, we are a people who are intelligent enough, hardworking enough to make it on our own. But why must we remain under French domination? Quite simply because the French benefit from keeping us under their control. What we do not understand, and this extends even to our intellectuals, which is regrettable, we did not understand that it was the survival of our countries that was at stake. When I quoted the French genius who said it was the stupidity of little Emmanuel Macron, I would have liked to see intellectuals speak out and condemn those remarks, but nothing happened. No one spoke out, yet we all have degrees. That's also what I regretted when Macron spoke like that, claiming that Niger belongs to him. That's what I condemned when Sarkozy spoke at Cheikh Anta Diop and said that Africa has not entered history. That's the tragedy of Africa. All right. So it's this kind of behavior that is outrageous and should outrage every worthy son of the Confederation. I pray that our pilgrims who are in Mecca, I offer my condolences to the families of our three compatriots who have passed away. In any case, that's the information we have so far. One death was the result of a traffic accident, and 2 others were due to a short illness. We pray to Allah to grant them His mercy and to accept their wishes and prayers before their last breath. For those who are still performing the rites, we wish them well and pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings them back to their families safe and sound. We wish a happy holiday to all our compatriots. Since the Islamic Association has already set the date, we wish a happy holiday to all our compatriots. That is also the purpose of what I wanted to say regarding my wishes and greetings to my compatriots, to the members of the Confederation, and for our countries and our Confederation. May Allah cover us with His infinite mercy. May He protect us from those with ill intentions and from their malice. May He grant that the Confederation triumphs over all malice. I won't say power, because none of these countries possesses power.
Thank you, Mr. President, truly for this interview, and thank you again for your candor and your thoughtful words. Ladies and gentlemen, this marks the end of this important interview graciously granted to us by the President of the Republic, Army General Abdourahmane Tiani. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thank you so much, families, for your time. I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure that your time spent here is worth it. What I was trying to say is everything he said is happening now. It is happening now. I'm working on a video and I'll bring it. It's good that they have all this information so they can be prepared and prepare well. Families, I can assure you, they are preparing. And they are at war. Seriously. Seriously, it's not a joke. And I hope the whole Africa will get up and do something instead of waiting for it to happen. Then it become like history, and like what happened in Libya. No, do something. Like it was saying, Africa, ECOWAS standby. It has been there and it is dormant for ages. This is serious. And as they will be sitting, watching, thinking it's none of our business, from there they will go to them because they don't care. Wherever they get their meal, they will eat it. They are fighting for their future children, generations, so that they will not be moving to Africa. And African leaders are sitting quietly because of the suitcase of money they gave them. Well, I'm saying suitcase of money because we have seen a lot that came to Burkina Faso. I'll put some of the pictures there if you haven't seen it yet. They don't care. I just finished a video about Prime Minister Sanko. I'll be sharing it with you, what he also said about the whole thing that is going on. I'll leave you here. It is long already. God bless you all, families. Leave comment. Be careful with the comment as well, because they are not allowing a lot of things anymore. And please share it as quick as possible. God bless you all. God bless our president. May he get more strength, all of them, to continue to do what they are doing. 40 years of experience is a lot. It's something no one can buy or pay for. They will use it. They will use all that they have to quench this fire. Thank you. My returning families, new ones, those who are passing by. If this is your first time and you are still here with me, please kindly like, share, and subscribe to join this amazing family under the comment section. It's not about me, but family under the comment section. Thank you, and God bless you all for your support. I'll be back with another news. It might be Mali, it might be Niger. Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a wonderful night. Maybe you'll be watching it in the night, in the morning. God bless you. Ready to RTV News for sharing all this news with us.